So I usually assume that many of you have minds like mine that want to know how I can benefit from this practice. Just practical reasons, because in 1994, when I went to the monastery, they gave me all of the tools, the methods in practice. But somehow, perhaps I was just too young. I didn't grasp how I was going to apply all of it into my life and how I could benefit from it. So let's just remind ourselves how this practice is so much more than just sitting down quietly for an hour, observing the mind, possibly taming the mind, possibly even separating ourselves from the mind. How this practice is so much more, and how we can bring this practice into in fact every aspect of our lives. For example, our relationships. Some of us live with families, some of us near friends, whatever it is, we have relationships. And if not with people, with our pets, with our things. Let's start off with people because they're often the most complicated. How can being present in this moment help in our relationships? The answer is very simple. Being present usually involves releasing the past, releasing all of our previous experiences together. And I think we've all come to realize how every relationship is a two-sided coin. There are there are good bits that align to our own desires and wants and needs. And then there are those other parts which are quite separate from our wants and our desires, and disagreements arise. And very often, if these adults, these relationships involve those of parents or teachers or people who were with us as we were growing up, it involves the imposition of their ideas, their desires on us. And so bringing in the past can somewhat complicate the present moment. Many of us, we have many things to forgive in those around us. And why does every religion, why does almost every major belief system emphasize forgiveness? Has it to do with giving benefit to those people who wronged us? Let's remind ourselves of a little story, or a little metaphor that Wayne Dyer used, which many of you have probably heard before. That wrong action that somebody did to us or said to us. Wayne Dyer likens it to the bite of a snake or a scorpion or whatever it is, a bite. And then Wayne Dyer, he reminds us It's not the bite that kills us or causes us the real harm. It's the poison that flows through our blood, through our system. It begins thickening the blood and causing all sorts of imbalances. And so if he asks us to liken that word, those words that were said to us that were hurtful with the bite. It happened once or twice or maybe 100 times, I don't know. It might have been the actions of someone else. It may have happened once, it may have happened many times, but the key is it's not happening right now in this room. It happened in the past. And if we could group all of those words, all of those actions in to represent the bite, what is the poison? What is the poison that kills us? It's when we continue to think about it, revisit it, relive those experiences, wanting to hurt them, wanting revenge, wanting the past to be different from the way it was. A poison that runs through our blood. And those of you who've practiced with me, you know how we often we remind ourselves that the body, this chemical factory that we call the body, it doesn't have the ability to distinguish between a thought and the present moment. And so when we think about that event or those events or words that happened in the past, this chemical factory, this body, it believes that it is happening right now. It releases stress hormones and all sorts of chemicals that bring imbalances to our body, that take away the ease that is the rightful state of this body and brings about dis-ease. And so the poison, it may kill us in a few hours. If we're talking about the snake bite, it may kill us immediately. It may kill us in a few days, a few weeks. But this poison, these thoughts, these memories that we hold on to, they slowly kill us. They bring about many of the ailments, the illnesses that we are currently experiencing. And that's where this practice comes in. It's about releasing the past. It's about very often these people, many of us are fortunate enough to live separate from them now that we're adults, completely live separate lives, and visit them only through our thoughts. But very often sometimes we continue to live in close proximity to these people. These people who are now very often new people. I think we all know that. We're all changing from moment to moment, day to day, month to month, year to year, because of the experiences we go through. And as we embrace the present moment, it also involves allowing the past to dissolve so that we may now rediscover these people almost as though they were a blank slate, with no expectations. Even that expectation that they will continue to play that role that they once played. I hope that's not too much food for thought. But now let's begin embracing the present moment, shall we? And so we're not going to push away anything. We're not going to push the past away. We're not going to push the future away. We're simply going to tune into this present moment where you can hear my voice saying these words, where you find your body seated or lying down, either on some cushions, on a chair, on a mattress. Here comes the bell that can represent us landing more completely into the present moment, possibly than ever before, simply because ever before dissolves with the past. As we land on the cushions and the chairs underneath us, experiencing the surfaces between our body and that cushion or chair or mattress, molding to the shape of each other, blending into each other, supporting each other. At this stage, you're like an aeroplane that's just landed back onto the runway. But there is still movement. But know that to be the movement within the mind. Because even though our bodies have landed, have stopped moving, have arrived here, in this practice, we do not expect the mind to do the same. Because the mind, it carries its own momentum. Every book we've read, every conversation we've had, some of them long gone, some of them as recent as an hour ago, all contributing to the momentum of the mind. But what this practice is about simply shifting our identification from the mind, which is always moving, to something that isn't. How do you know there's movement? You only know that there is movement if there is a part of you that is still, that is unmoving. Have you noticed? When you stand at the side of a railway track and you watch the train moving along the tracks, you know the train is moving because you are not moving. You are still. You are the observer. You are the witness. And so, in the same way as you watch your thoughts change, sometimes about the ticking of the clock on the wall next to you, sometimes about the car alarm that's gone off outside your door, sometimes about the dog barking in the other room, changes from one thing to the other, one place to the other, different timelines, even. But it's nice to know and observe these changes, because where there is change, there must be something unchanging, something still, something unmoving. And that is the part that we will tap into. And how do we do that? Back to our body. Have you noticed that your body, irrespective of where your mind goes, your body is located in this space called the present moment? In fact, your body has always been in the present moment. Even the body, it changed from that of a child into that of a teenager, into that of the adult that you now are. But there was the witness, the observer that observed these changes. And so it's not really the body that we want to identify with, but the witness. And this witness, where do we find it? We find it in the present moment. And how do we access the present moment? We will use our bodies at this moment to access the present moment. And what would our bodies be if not for the five senses? Our five doorways into the present moment. And we started off with those points of contact between body and chair or body and cushion. We call that the sense of touch, don't we? The sense of touch, which we so often associate with only the tips of the fingers, but in fact envelops the whole body. And so feel your whole body, its surfaces, whatever you can experience within the body, that very essence that keeps the heart beating and the lungs breathing and the food digesting through the stomach and the ears listening and the eyes seeing. Our doorways into the present moment, powered by some mysterious battery, some mysterious energy form, which we shall not attempt to name or label, but simply experience. Feel the skin around your arms, your shoulders, your chests, and your backs. Feel the way the skin either interacts with fabric of your clothing or directly with the air around you. Even for those parts of the body that are wrapped in clothing, begin awakening the skin underneath it so that it may experience the thin layer of warm air that's somehow trapped in between fabric and skin. And then use this as a contrast so that you may now experience the true temperature of the air around you that brushes against those exposed parts of your body, the face, the hands, possibly the neck. Gradually experience yourself as this sitting, breathing body, so filled with awareness and presence. The trillions of cells that make up your body, awake, in fact, always awake, but just us becoming more aware and conscious of them in this present moment. This is all the present moment is. Notice how you've released most of the stories. The stories are still there. And one of the stories involves learning the English language. And so, can you notice how you are using the English language to translate these sounds that are moving from my vocal cords through my lips, through these airwaves into your ears? And so, we still use the mind, but only so far as it is relevant to this present moment in identifying the areas of the body that we have been experiencing, the temperature and the fabrics and the seating and the cushions underneath us. All identifiable simply because of that filter called the mind. And notice there will be stories which are irrelevant to this present moment, and you will learn through practice, maybe not today, maybe not immediately, but through practice, which is why we call this a practice. You will learn through practice to release those stories that are not relevant to this present moment. Eckhart Tolle, he often speaks of listening in presence. When we are with, whether it's clients, customers, family members, partners, children, students, teachers, all of the relationships, he speaks about listening and truly being there with them, releasing the past, releasing the future, truly listening, releasing even the need to analyze and respond, just listening there in the moment. And he goes on to speak about how he illustrates the story about how he met one of his neighbors. One of his neighbors had visited him. She had been a Holocaust survivor, and something had really upset her. She was so agitated. And she sat down in his living room and they talked. And well, he didn't say much. He was just present. He said all he did was be there for her. He did not say a word. And he just gave permission. And the conversation had nothing to do with the Holocaust. It had something to do with something very administrative, something completely irrelevant. He just listened in presence, in awareness, releasing the past, releasing the future. And he speaks about how that conversation transformed her. It lightened her load. It allowed her to release much heaviness and pain that was stored deep within. And she left with a smile and feeling so much lighter. Perhaps a little glimpse into how we can use presence and awareness and this very practice in our day-to-day lives, in our relationships, whether in person or through the telephones. Bring your attention to your sense of hearing now, since we were speaking about listening in presence. Listen to all of the sounds around you, including my voice, including the sound of the bell. Now, with the ringing of the next bell, let it be a call to attention, a return back into presence and awareness, so that we, in a way, begin the practice again by tapping into the presence and awareness and separating ourselves from the mind. For an instant, seeing the mind, recognizing the mind to be the separate entity that it truly is. No different from the pieces of clothing that we have on our body. Possibly the very reason why we sometimes refer to the mind as my mind. My shirt, my jumper, my car, my house, my mind. That means me, the I, and the mind are separate. Feel the space appearing. And then using your sense of hearing as your tool, as your doorway into the present moment. And this can be quite overwhelming because of the whole symphony of sounds that surround us. Notice how I refer to it as a symphony because there are so many sounds around us. But in a symphony, every instrument has its place. I can hear a loud bird outside my window, a part of my symphony. What's your symphony sound like? And what does using the sense of hearing as a tool mean? It means when you find yourself drifting away into a story, whether to do with your relationships, finances, or health, or whatever else, once you have realized that this has happened, you bring yourself back to your sense of hearing. But now, because there are so many instruments, so many different sounds, there are sounds unfolding within our own bodies, the sound of breath, the subtle sound of the heartbeat, the digestive system. And then there are sounds within your room. Sound of this computer bell coming through your speakers, the sound of the ticking of a clock, a fridge or a freezer, your computer's fan. And then that whole world outside of your room, the sound of cars and honking and alarms and mobile phones and helicopters and planes and what else, what not. A whole symphony. And the secret to the listening practice, the listening meditation, is to initially note how some of these sounds stimulate thought. That means you find yourself comfortable with some sounds, in fact, liking some sounds. And then you find yourself disliking other sounds. And the likes and the dislikes are where you find yourself stimulating the mind. But then there is something in between, which is even more interesting, which is what we will be using in our practice, the neutral sounds. Those sounds that you hardly even noticed. Because when you begin to focus on these neutral sounds, try that. If you're near the kitchen or the dining room, listen out for the humming of the fridge or the freezer. And for some of us, it might be the computer in front of us, its fan whizzing away, humming. For some of us, it might be the bird song coming in through the windows, through those tiny little gaps in the windows. When you begin to latch on to these neutral sounds, when you begin to focus on these neutral sounds, that one instrument, that single instrument, simply because it's neutral, because you neither like nor dislike it, it becomes an opportunity to no longer stimulate new thought. gives you the opportunity to step back and simply watch the current thoughts as they flow by, one thought after the other, jumping from this thought to the other. You can start visualizing your mind as a stream, a thought stream. But the mind, it's a little bit different, isn't it? Because unlike the stream that continues to flow, have you noticed with the thoughts, gaps, they appear where one thought ends and a new one begins. But let's just stick with this metaphor of the stream. And let's enter into this part of the practice as beginners. In fact, that's how we always enter into this practice, with a beginner's mind. And let's picture one of those worst moments where we were agitated, worried, angry, frustrated. But it's a lot easier to watch it, having already grounded ourselves in the present moment. But do you remember those moments when we were affected? That's a little bit like being carried by the stream, carried within the stream. You think it's going to last forever. You think the problem is going to be there forever, the challenge, the grief, the sadness, the loneliness. You think it's going to be there forever simply because it is carrying you. You are moving with the stream, with the thought stream. And then the way we started this practice was to simply tap into the present moment, to stop, to just notice that our bodies had stopped moving. Here comes the bell. And with the bell, once again, land on your cushions, land on your chairs, and stop moving with the water. Stop moving with the thought stream. You immediately begin to smile because it's a stream. A moment ago, when it was carrying you, you were lying horizontally, you were kicking, you were punching, you believed the water to be so much deeper than it actually was because of the way in which it was splashing into your nose and somehow creating the illusion of depth and danger. But as you stop, your feet reach downwards, you begin to stand, and you begin to discover how the water barely reaches up to your knee. Just a tiny little stream. The stream continues to flow. And in fact, that is what the practice is. A simple recognition that the mind is separate. And I do not need to move with the thoughts. But the thoughts, they continue to brush against my ankles. Sometimes there are splashes and it reaches up to my nose or my head or my lips or my neck. But we ground ourselves into the present moment, stabilize ourselves, catch our footing. Practice balancing ourselves. For many of us, this might take a few moments. It may take more than a few moments. But the beauty about this practice is that you are always in the present moment. And therefore, you do not need to be anywhere other than where you are right now. Where you find yourself is in a space of perfection. And through practice, you will begin to decide. You may want to stay here a bit longer. In fact, you may wish to stay here very much longer because you like the feel of the water brushing and playing against your ankles and your knees. You like the splashing. You like that cool feeling. But for many of us who are in this room, we've developed a bit of a curiosity as to what's outside there. We've started to notice the banks of the stream. On the banks of the stream, we see a completely different and unfamiliar vegetation. There are grass, there's grass, there are flowers, there are all sorts of trees, and then we might decide, I'd like to explore this spaciousness. But we can only do so having recognized that we have stopped moving, that it is the mind that is moving. But we continue to enjoy the stream, its sounds, its bubbling, its gurgling, that take the form of all of those voices from our past and imagined future. All of the colors, the images, sometimes even the passing debris as it moves past us. But now, with the ringing of the bell, let's do this together. Let us step outside of the stream into the space called the present moment, outside of the thought stream. With the ringing of this bell, find something to hold on to, a low-lying branch, a root that may be sticking, a strong and stable root that may be sticking out from the banks of the stream. Hold on to it. Those are the teachings that you already know, that of forgiveness, that of kindness, that of stillness, that of presence. And then bring yourself out into the present moment where there is warm sunshine that begins to dry the droplets of water that have up until now kept you quite soaked and cold and wet. The droplets begin to evaporate. And then you become aware of how slippery the slope is and how easy it is to fall back into the stream. And therefore, you begin taking steps away from the stream. And that forms the essence of this practice. With each practice, more space appears between the witness, the presence, the kindness that is the essence of who we truly are, and the mind, which represents everything we have learned and absorbed from our schools, parents, magazines, movies, and everything else. And soon, with enough space, we find ourselves resting, returning back to the exact position that you may find yourself in at this particular moment. You can still hear the bubbling and the gurgling, and you can still see the play of light as the sunshine reflects off the stream and the droplets and the spray. But this time you will ground yourself onto the banks of the stream, finding yet another tool, our breath. And so you bring your attention to your breathing, which feels so much more comfortable having left the stream, having left that struggle where all of the splashes were blocking our breath and breathing process. Now breathing more fully, more completely, more comfortably than ever before. Breathe in that way, almost as though you were breathing for the first time with clear airways. What would breath taste like if you were to use a word such as delicious to describe it? It begins with the awareness of your nose and its inner workings, the interaction between skin and air as it flows in and out. Notice how you're no longer too bothered about the stream. The stream is there in the background, but you have given your attention to something far more crucial to your present moment, where you simply sit and, more importantly, breathe. Feel little things, little sensations such as changes in temperature. Notice I use the word changes in temperature. How do you know that there's a change in temperature? You know there is a change in temperature simply because you are utilizing thoughts. Because your mind remembers what the temperature was like when you breathed in or as you are breathing in. Your mind contrasts the breath out against that in breath. And so you know what warmth is, what coolness is, what crispness is, what dryness is, what humidity is. as you label every sensation, but now using your mind as the friend it was always meant to be. A friend that helps translate this present moment. Change the pace of your breathing now. Breathing in as deeply as you can. Again, you'll be using your mind. You'll find your mind anchoring itself to the breath a little bit more, simply because it is the mind that is going to help you to regulate your breath in this way. Breathing in as deeply as you can, reaching the capacity, and then pausing for a brief moment before you take in even a little bit more air. And with the out breath, releasing as slowly and as gently as you can, giving you an opportunity to experience every sensation, every experience of that warm and more humid air flowing down and out through the nasal passage and the nostrils, making its way down the upper lip, sometimes even all the way down to the lip. Continuing with this deep intake. Continuing with the slow and gentle release. You are using the sense of touch, those cells within the nasal passage and the upper lip, to enter more completely into the present moment, grounding yourself onto the banks of this stream. Now try visualizing the breath as you take it in, visualizing the breath moving deep down into your bodies, through the lungs and the chest and the stomach, even lower through the pelvic regions and down into the legs, down, reaching every cell within your foot and your toe, and then releasing, visualizing the breath, experiencing the breath as you gradually and slowly release it. And now, as you take in your deep breath, letting the breath flow through your legs, through your feet, into the surfaces underneath you, almost as though you were growing roots into the earth underneath you, connecting you, joining you to Mother Earth, or Father Earth, or however you refer to the planet, or however you would like to refer to this wonderful planet that sustains us. Grounding yourself, anchoring yourself so that you no longer slip into the thought stream, into the mind stream as easily as you once did. Grounding yourself here in this present moment. And then taking in all of the space around you. How you have now become a bridge between the earth and the atmosphere around you, all that you see. space as far as the eyes can see, beyond the peaks of the mountains and the trees and the hills and the oceans and the seas, your body connecting these two worlds together. This world above and around, and that world deep underneath the surface, invisible to the eyes and the rest of the senses, grounding yourself. The trunk of your body becoming as stable and as still as one of those trees that has been here for a very long time. Trees with roots that reach deep into the crust of the earth. Unaffected by the stream, unaffected by weather patterns, by storms of the mind, allowing the branches swaying and dancing to the winds, to the storms, knowing that it is the winds and the storms that move. And that we are here in this moment called the present moment. Always here, sitting, breathing, sometimes walking, sometimes running, sometimes exercising, sometimes cooking, but always in the present moment. And now the final bell. An opportunity to bring this presence with us as we move through our afternoon and our evenings from moment to moment and breath to breath. Maybe with a few more drops of kindness than before. Maybe with a few more drops of patience than before. Patience which we have no longer any use for. Having tasted the present moment, having tasted the eternal present moment, knowing that we have arrived in the present moment, the eternal present moment. Please feel free to unmute yourselves.
Thank you, Vinod. That was